We usually broadcast on Saturdays, but due to other broadcast commitments, we have had to move to Sunday night. But certainly, that's not going to change much about the way the racing is going to pan out here tonight. It's always exciting GT racing here in the official B-Class series on the iRacing service. This is round 10 from Charlotte Motor Speedway. We are running the road course as NASCAR ran in 2019. I'm Reese Gardner and Brad Wingard alongside me in the commentary box as per usual. G'day, Brad. Charlotte Motor Speedway, bit of a different kettle of fish to some of the other tracks we've been racing at this season. It's compact, it's tight, it's got some of those opportunities to draft, it's got bank turns, it's got pretty much everything.
Hey Reese, yeah, it's very different to a lot of the tracks that we've been at in the past few weeks, especially going from a lot of Grand Prix tracks in Snetterton last week, and now we're here, still in North America. But like you said, this is a Roval, but also it's very unique in a Roval because there is quite a bit of elevation change. Excluding the banking, there's 8 meters of elevation through the infield, which is pretty unheard of for a lot of like NASCAR and Roval tracks. So that's going to add another dimension to an otherwise difficult track.
Indeed, that infield section built on top of a rock formation in the infield of the circuit, so that does provide a little bit of elevation change, which is kind of unique for a combined road and oval course. 16 turns here, and thinking that the prime overtaking opportunities are going to be into turn 1, obviously, very tight there. Maybe into turn 8. Definitely you can get a draft into turn 10, turn 11, the chicane, and then into turns 15 and 16, the final chicane towards the end of this layout. So there are still some opportunities here to pass cars, but for the most part, I think it's going to be very cramped single file running because there's an awful lot of turns here on the infield of this circuit. We've also got to think about the pit lane as well here, Brad. You were telling me before we went live, it's about 40 seconds lane and stop time, but pit exit is going to be particularly difficult. It's very tight.
Yeah, it really is. Coming pretty much onto the racing line, or where they make the transition to the racing line out of turn 2 into turn three's braking zone. So that's going to be really hit and miss. Hopefully more miss than hit, but it is a very sharp merge onto that braking zone. And the entire infield is, well, this track in general really reminds me of a street circuit. It's so narrow, there's not much room for error. Even on the quad oval, the last and first section, sorry, is still pretty tight with that wall at the pit line coming up to you very fast at the exit of the last corner. So there's a lot of opportunities to make this race really interesting just on the racing surface itself, let alone when you add nearly 30 cars to the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. Here are the championship points for VRS GT Sprint as it stands at the moment. Josh Rogers, the Australian, based in Europe now, and doing wonderful things there with Coanda Simsport. 1,803 points, but Max Delorco really pressuring him for the lead of the championship with only a few weeks to go in the season, and with drop rounds already applied, it's going to be very tough here for the drivers to stake out their positions. Gerald Chevalier, who we've followed a few times, as well as Bruno Carnero, they're in third and fourth, which is awesome to see. And it's looking to me, unfortunately, that none of the drivers that we see here in the top of the standings are in this session tonight, but certainly we'll still get a brilliant race. We certainly have a couple of familiar faces in this session. I would say that first off, Maxime Tillynerve, who's car 1, he's put at P7 in the qualifying session at the moment. And we've also got to think about Yuanji Lin, who we've seen in a couple of broadcasts here on SimSpeed TV. Yuanji driving the Ford GT here as we follow the Audi, the number 12, making their way around here, the infield section of the circuit. It's Chris Chatterton, who we're taking a look at here. And this infield, this is where the elevation change starts to come in. You've got to brake and turn at the same time for that tight right-hander. And then down the hill, use the bowl of the circuit to kind of launch yourself towards this next left-hander, cut across the inside line, and then out onto, well, Brad, this isn't really a straight, but functionally, I would suppose it is. It's flat out, and you can pick up a draft through here.
Yeah, I was going through that dilemma earlier before the broadcast because, like you said, it's not exactly a straight. So I'm calling it the longest acceleration zone on the circuit because it isn't straight, but a lot of it is straight, and it's the longest. It's the fastest part of the circuit. So I'm going with acceleration zone because, yeah, it's not straight, but half of it is. So not quite Imola, sort of almost straight. There is a lot of banking there, but yeah, big draft coming into that chicane, which I think we're gonna see a lot of moves into that corner.
Yes, indeed. 1 minute 18.5 there for Chris Chatterton. And looks like his qualifying session is done there as we have under 2 minutes to go. Daniel Gray, uh, another driver who we've seen a couple of times here on SimSpeed TV. Let's see how well he does here. Currently 17th at the moment on a 117.005. If he wants to get another position, all he needs to do is make up 0.02 of a second versus John Sylvester. But those curbs in the final chicane really playing havoc with him. 116.7 will do it. That is fantastic there. It moves him up into P13. Last couple of drivers now completing their laps as the session draws to a close. Yam Jabur making his way along that acceleration zone that Brad talked about, the second of them into the final chicane here, driving the BMW. Got to be careful not to pick up an off track by running too far across those curbs in the last chicane. And it's a 116.8 there for Yam Jabur. Good stuff there.
Matthias Beers on his lap now in the number 11 car. He's currently 23rd with a 17.4. We have a very close grid as he pulls out of that one. I'm not sure what happened there, but obviously wasn't happy with it. But we have one car left on track at the moment. Mario Sedwidge, sorry, getting my no, that's not.
Marco Schweigler, I think,
Thank you.
is who
Yes.
you're referring to there in the Lamborghini. So
So he
yeah,
is on his second lap. So this will be his last attempt. Sorry, Reese. We
all good.
have 16 or so, 14 seconds left in qualifying. Sorry. So should be able to make it to the line from there, but very
Mm,
wide exit. Really hard to get that one right. You want to kind of exit narrow to the like the bump rather than wide into that wall because
he's not
the
going to make
you
it.
can cut the part before the banking and make it a lot of time. So not quite the exit he was looking for there.
No, no, certainly not. I was unable to complete a lap before the time ran out, so we can go through the grid here. Guillaume Egloff is going to take pole position for this one, 4 tenths of a second ahead of Oskari Karkinen, who we've seen a few times here. Dorian Delagne starting out of P3 alongside Chris Whitaker. Dylan O'Keefe ultimately making it P5 alongside Ali Sihat Akdeniz, with Chris Lowers, Maxime Tilionov, Lachlan Cowie, and Tobias Vessels rounding out the top 10. Top 12 rounded out by Yanji Lin and Matt Monestier.
Starting on row 7 is Daniel Gray and Ian Jabor, Jory Steinmetz and Florian Radoy on row 8, John Sylvester and Francisco de la Fuente on row 9, Florian Roda, sorry, Fabio Sal, Rafalski on row 11 next to Albert Clavaguera, Matthias Spear, and Ron Dat rounding out row 12.
And the field rounded out by Chris Chatterton, David Gomez, and Isidri Mirofere, the last cars to set lap times, Marco Schweigler and Shane Dunn, making up the 29 cars you'll be seeing here tonight. And another thing that we have neglected to mention about this track is the unique way the drivers start here. They all start in a line angled towards the direction of travel, and that comes from the NASCAR races run here in real life. That's how they're all going to pull away for the formation lap. They will have to be careful of other drivers if they end up making a small error getting off the line here, but they'll all come out and make their way around a single formation lap here before we go racing for 40 minutes. And of course, as usual in Virtual Racing School GT, a pit stop is required. And we're thinking the pit lane window is going to be from about lap 9 to about lap 23, Brad.
Yeah, it's a I mean, it's the same window as we always have, but because the laps here are so short and there's going to be quite a few of those laps. The pit window does blow out a bit, and in the race before this one, there was a very big variety of when people were pitting. There were a lot of people that came in when the window opened. Some were lap like 18, 19, and some were right at the end of the window. So it really depends on track position because, like we've said, this track is so narrow and it can be quite hard to pass, especially through the infield section that they're going through now. A lot of people might decide to pit early. And if you're someone that's stuck behind someone who pits early, you might try to go long to make up that difference. So, pit strategy here could play a very big part in trying to get that overlap, which we saw in the last 2 weeks when people were struggling to overtake. They did go for that alternate strategy. So, it's going to be very interesting to see how the pit strategy plays out today with the varying times and positions.
So the window is a little bit bigger than I said, from lap 7 to lap 26. That's 5 extra laps that the drivers will get to work out their strategy foibles. And all things considered, despite the amount of turns you have to negotiate and the amount of work you got to do around a lap, lap time here actually pretty short. We've seen drivers setting lap times of at least a minute 15, which seriously is quite rapid for these GT3 cars making their way around a track. So I'm thinking that once everyone works themselves out after the first couple of laps, if there's an incident and cars are spun and they have to work themselves out from there, then maybe the leaders are going to have to start dealing with traffic pretty quickly. And it's going to be difficult to negotiate traffic with how difficult it is to pass there on the infield. They'll be hoping that they come up to them when they come up to the braking zones like this one for the very tight NASCAR chicane. Used to be a bit more of a fast bus stop sort of deal, but in 2019, it was made a bit deeper for the interests of driver safety, and also it provides a bit of a better overtaking opportunity too, so that certainly helps. There's that area that Brad was talking about just before, that painted runoff area on the exit of the chicane. You'll see drivers cutting straight across that to try and get a little bit of extra speed. But for the time being, only a couple of turns left for these drivers to negotiate, and they can start. And they will have to negotiate the chicane on their way up to the start-finish line. So Guillaume Egloff controlling the field now as the pace car comes into the pits. It's going to be pretty tight quarters here through the right and the left to start the race, but Guillaume has decided to go early as the green flag flies. Oskari Kakkonen is going to fend off Dorian Delan there in second as everyone makes their way through the chicane at racing speed, side by side between Actoniz and Tilly Nervin. The McLaren winning out the battle there. Good stuff from Maxime, the French-Canadian. Chris Lowers, meanwhile, defending from Lachlan Cowie as they come into turn 3, side by side between the two BMWs of Tobias Vessels and Matt Monestier. But everyone else pretty much running in single file as it stands, and Guillaume Egloff now in the lead by a second.
Yeah, it's insane that that start is always sketchy. As we see two wide in the mid pack. That is the BMW of who was that? That
That's
was
Jabur.
yes, it was. Yeah, on Dylan Gray, they're still going side by side on the oval. The good thing about Charlotte is you can run multiple lines around that the banking. So usually we see that in like the Coke 600, but still applicable here. But ultimately, that is Jabor winning out on Daniel Gray and Yuri
Steinmetz.
Steinmetz. Yeah, is going to try and take advantage of that, but does get run wide. And yeah, there we see they're cutting it already, and now he's under attack from Florian Radoy. This is the problem with trying to make a move through those chicanes is, yes, it's beneficial, but if you don't win out, you lose so much time going down those long NASCAR straights, or not straights.
Indeed. So, lap 1 complete, and we're already starting to see these battle packs form. Looking at the Mercedes of John Sylvester, who's following hot in the wheel tracks of Florian Radoy here. He's got another BMW and McLaren behind him. The McLaren seems to be a pretty popular car choice here. Fabio Sal also driving one there just behind them, as there's a bit of a move here further up towards the front. That's Delan making his way past O'Keefe and up into the podium positions. That's pretty much the prime overtaking opportunity on the looking a bit further back, Tillynerve and Cowie and the Audi of Actonitz here, trying his best to make his way past, outbraking Lachlan Cowie into the chicane. And Cowie, I think, saw that coming from a mile away and decided to leave that door open. Does give him a flash of the lights for good measure, though, so not entirely over. And I will correct myself. The BMW pass and the Porsche was Dylan O'Keefe passing Chris Whitaker in his Porsche 911 GT3R as they make their way through the final chicane, beginning the third lap of the race. You barely get any time to rest between coming out of the final corner and setting up your braking zone for turn one.
Yeah, it's a very, very short run from the last turn. I think it's turn 15 or 17, depending on which map you look at in turn one. There has actually been an incident. Florian Radoy and he
Oh,
got
yeah.
spun at turn 8, and then it was a Constantina effect between he and uh Francisco Fuente, and then Fabio Sal came in and collected the two of them. So he's now in the well, most of those guys are all in the pits. So they're
Oh, man.
pretty much out of that race as we'll go to a replay right now.
Yeah, and this is a shame to see. Florian Radoy looks to me like he actually did that by himself. He it was coming onto the oval, and he just ran a little bit too wide through the double right-hander and clobbered the wall, and ended up hitting the wall at the apex, which basically meant that the cars coming in didn't have many places to go. They wouldn't have had much time to react, and it's a bit of a blind corner as well. So you're about to see it here. Radoy gets into the wall and spins around, goes straight into the apex wall, gets collected by the BMW, and then the McLaren. Oh man, poor Fabian there. That's a huge shame. All of those guys then into the pits right away. Big shame.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well, we say the problem, but also the joys of tracks like this is because they are so narrow, but corners in the last part of the infield are so unsighted because there is that unexpected elevation change. Incidents like that can happen so early, especially in the first part of this race and probably towards the end of the race as well when pit cycles come through. But there's not a whole lot of time to react. They might not be doing NASCAR speeds around the oval, but they're not exactly slouches in a straight line either. So reaction times are very important around a track like this when there's not much room for error.
Absolutely. We were just briefly checking in with Yam Jabur and Daniel Gray before, but we checked back in with O'Keefe and Whitaker, and Whitaker here going to try and get that position back from the BMW. Compare lap times ever so briefly. O'Keefe, 1 minute 16.969 versus a 1:16.669 from Chris Whitaker. So that Porsche is looking very pacey. And you notice here, they're running all the way out to the edge of the track towards the grass. There's no off-track penalties for going outside those blue and white painted lines at this circuit. Using the NASCAR cutting rules, so these guys are free to use all of the tarmac as the racing surface, which does widen the circuit a fair bit compared to what it would be otherwise, but still pretty narrow with very little margin for error around this circuit. On board with Whitaker into the chicane, and it's looking like the two BMWs doing battle up ahead. Astoria and Delan leading this pack, and O'Keefe really starting to round them up here.
Yeah, talking about that not off track part between turns 4 and 5 of the infield. Delan did get an off track through there because he actually went on the grass. That's why Dylan O'Keefe caught up so much on that lap. As I'm not sure if we caught that in the back of shot last lap, but through that section, it is quite easy to run wide because you do have that extra space to use, but it's very easy to be a little bit too greedy and clip the grass, which is what Delaney did, but he kept it under control. He had a little bit of a wiggle, but he only lost time. He didn't spin or anything like that. So I'm sure he's probably clutching that wheel a bit tight, but it could have been a lot worse, a lot easier than it was.
Absolutely. The battle for 10th still working itself out as the battle for 22nd. Have a look at this. What a pack we've got here for the positions outside the top 20. Schweigler here trying a move on Rondat in the McLaren, has to pull out. Those two Ferraris of David Gomez and Shane Dunn got a front row seat to all of this action, but they might be a bit frustrated that they might feel they have the pace, but these two battling ahead, kind of holding them up as Schweigler ends up having to fall back into the clutches of the two Ferraris here. Some fantastic racing opportunities here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And Rondat is holding on to that 22nd position just fine for the time being. He's just trying to place his car and, oh dear. Wow, that was a move just behind. That was Florian Roeder making his way past Chris Chatterton in the Audi.
Yeah, that was a brilliant move. That was a little bit late, like a little bit side by side through the chicane, but they left each other enough space, and that was a really nice move to catch in the back of the shot. So
Oh,
gets it
we've
done.
had cars spun at turn one. Sorry to interrupt. Rafalski having to make a bit of a recovery here. And it looks like that was contact with Matthias Beer that ended up causing that incident. It was, I think, a botched move there by Rafalski. And it seems that Rafalski is blaming Beer for that. We'll get a virtual racing school replay here. You see Rafalski on the inside of Beer, and Beer turns in, and Rafalski is there. That is not what you want to see at turn one. And, well, Rafalski trying his best to get the car turned round, but you can't exactly do donuts in these very easily unless you turn the traction control off. So that's his race ruined.
Yeah, it's Matthias Beers actually towed back to the pits as well, so he must have sustained a lot more damage from that than we originally thought because we didn't, or I didn't quite see what happened to him after that spin.
Oh, hello. That is, I think, Whitaker, who's there on the infield, down through the quad oval, and all the way down to 16th now. He was fighting for those top four positions, so be interesting to see what happened to him here. What on earth has gone on for Chris Whitaker? And oh my goodness, hit from behind by one of the BMWs there. That's one of the issues with that braking zone. You got cars in front of you, you can't really sight your braking, and once they're on the brakes, you got no choice but to go straight into the back of them. Whitaker was also on the grass ever so slightly, so I don't know if that contributed to the incident, but either way, Whitaker going to be a very unhappy man right now. Oh, he's round again, as we can see, and that's coming onto the oval out of the infield. He's lost even more positions out of that one.
We'll get a replay of that one up now as we head down between turns 4, turn 5, up the hill, and misses the inside curve. That's where a lot of people get tripped up. Over the hill, fine. Switch back through that. Oh, it's the compression of
Oh,
the brakes through that like banked corner is what I was trying to say. It does upset the car quite a bit, and you don't see it too much in these cars, but still, as we see it is still possible to do. So very strange mistake to make on your own, but I guess it's probably better to make it on your own than with someone else. But his first incident was with Chris Lowers, and it was a very, very big net code going into that final chicane. So very unfortunate for both of those drivers, and I'm sure Chris will send him a message to apologize. But there was a big gap between the two of them, and unfortunately, iRacing put it down as a collision, and Whitaker came off worse for it.
so it seems, and Whitaker has become the first car to enter the pit lane as well. But we look at Yuanji Lin in the Ford. He's right in the midst of this very intense battle pack in the midfield. He's got a Lamborghini, a BMW, and a McLaren behind him. That's Gray, Jabeur, and Steinmetz. And Yuanji Lin repping the Ford. It's one of those classic iRacing GT3 cars, and semi-fictional. The Ford GT was run in GT racing in real life as going for the move as Daniel Gray at turn one, and he gets it done. Yanji Lin compromised, which allows Yam Jabeur all the way through at turn two. So that's two positions lost in the space of effectively one corner there for Yuanji. But Good to see the Ford still out there being used. iRacing bases their Ford GT3 off their GT2 model, which was added to the sim in 2010 or thereabouts. As we check back in with Acton is currently in 8th place, and he'll be wanting to make up a few more positions out of this one, waiting for the pit cycle to really get those positions. Maxime Tillynerve is absolutely streaking away, having, I think, looks like, yeah, losing a bit of time to Lachlan Cowie, but he's got quite the gap over this battle pack here. See what the Audi can do coming into the final chicane, as he has the draft from Tobias Vessels just behind. Whitaker, it seems, is not going to make it out of the pits anytime soon, evidently with quite a bit of damage to his rear end from that hit. And of course, he's driving the Porsche, so engine in the back. You want to avoid rear end hits if possible. But have a look at this battle. The Audi trying to round up this BMW. Almost a move there from Ali Akdenitz. Let's see if he gets anything done here in the infield. Once again, avoid that curb, as we have a scheduled pit stop here from Shane Dunn. First of our cars to come in for a routine pit stop here. So, Brad, this is going to set the standard for how drivers activate this strategy.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And probably not a bad decision. Sometimes you need just a quick refresh, come into the pits, get that fuel done to get you to the end. It can reset your racing brain a bit. At least that's how I feel. At lap 10, or end of lap 10, start of lap 11. That's a pretty good stop as well. 37-second pit stop and lane transition is about what we're going to see. Maybe a second or two slower than some of the other cars later in the race, but it gets you out in fresh air and you can reset. The downside to that is Egloff is only 3.5 seconds behind him, so he's going to want to try and put some good lap times in to try and keep or extend that gap, because the last thing you want to do is lose time on your alternate stop because the leader is trying to pass you. Because
Mm.
obviously, if you're a good driver, you'll try and get out of their way because they're trying to win the race. But if you've pitted for an alternate strategy to try and undercut someone, the last thing you want to do is yield time to lapping traffic. So we'll see how that one plays
Oh,
out.
oh dear. There's contact for 6th place. Chris Lowers running into the back of Maxime Detilly, and I think a few words will be exchanged out of that one. Detilly grazing the wall, coming onto the oval section. The field really concertinaed up there, and looks like Maxime lost quite a bit of time. Meanwhile, up ahead, oh, have a look at the move of the Lamborghini on the BMW here. Daniel Gray trying to get past Matt Monestier, attempting to make big moves here is Gray in the Lamborghini, but oh dear, he's on the outside around the oval. That's going to become the inside for the chicane. He just needs to stay alongside, or is he going to yield? I think he has to commit, because Yam Jabeur is right there, but a bit later on the brakes is Matt Monestier and cuts the nose off. Brilliant stuff there from those two. Meanwhile, just behind these guys, Yuanji Lin has got an awful lot of Yuri Steinmetz to worry about in that bright green and yellow McLaren. Losing a little bit of pace after getting past is Yuanji Lin. So still trying his best to hold on to the position, but it seems a matter of time before Steinmetz pulls the move.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, actually, just before you go on, I'll point out that Lachlan Cowie has made his way past Dorian Delan and is now in 4th place.
Oh, very good. He we missed that move. Not quite sure where that occurred. I think that was turn one by the look of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, easy to like up the inside of turn one. Very nicely done. He's also pulled out a near enough 3/4 of a second gap already. So very good lap by Cowie there to get in front. And this train for what's this? Pretty much 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th are all near enough same real estate on track. So Yanni Lin has pulled out a slight gap on Yuri Steinmetz
Oh.
in the McLaren. Dylan Gray, though, he's committed to that turn 16 pass, but he got it done. I was actually going to comment last lap. He did commit, but he committed safely to the extent that it didn't really screw either of them up for that last chicane. He held his line like he should have. He didn't lift too early, so he didn't lose a position to behind. But he still broke enough to be able to slot into the gap behind. So it was very well driven by both of them. But ultimately, getting past on this attempt is also very well done.
Maxime Tilly, meanwhile, and the McLaren going defensive, and a bit of an opportunity sighted there for Ali Sihat Akdeniz up the inside of Chris Lowers coming onto the oval. Those three very close together on the infield, and it seems Maxime was, losing a bit of pace there on the infield, which allowed those guys to catch up to him. Akdeniz, though, up the inside at the chicane, gets it done beautifully on Chris Lowers, but not so beautifully on the exit, got into the wall, and he's going to lose 2 positions here because Tobias Vessels gets both of them on the exit. Excellent stuff there from Tobias, so he's going to be up into 7th place now. Actoniz manages to maintain position over Lowers, so ultimately it seems the move was more or less successful.
We say that, but Tobias touched the wall on the exit of the chicane. We were talking about that pre-race. It creeps up on you so
Oh,
quickly. Now he's gone from a
oh,
2 for 1 for all contact with Dylan
oh.
Gray, nearly a 3 for 1 loss. So reset positions to where they were last up. I was about to say Tobias is going to turn up next week with a Lowe's
Oh,
sponsorship. Oh, Dylan Gray, big contact on the wall.
Daniel Gray, and unfortunately, that is front end damage for him. He's going to have to make a few points turns to get that car going again, and certainly going to have to come into the pits to repair some damage. It looked like he just got a bit crossed up there on the exit of the right-hander in the midst of that very intense battle we were seeing. Either way, on board with the McLaren, chasing down the BMWs here. Yuri Steinmetz, who's made his way past Jianxi Lin. That Ford is quickly becoming a distant memory to the McLaren driver, but he's got a line of cars in front of him, a line of BMWs, and then an Audi just up ahead. Lowers and Actonez just up ahead. Oh, there was almost a move into the chicane from Lowers, but not going to happen this time around, and they are forced single file once more through the chicane. Seems to me, as we see Gray in the pits, Acton is going for a bit of a half spin out of turn 1. That's allowed Lowers alongside him coming through turn 2. Goodness me, every time we look away, something else happens in this field. And it just goes to show, it's so easy to make mistakes around here as it's wide for Acton is, and Lowers is going to try and, oh, no, he's not. He's going to pull out of that maneuver, but try up the inside potentially. Actoniz runs wide again, but he's going to have the defensive line for the left-hander. Unfortunately for him, the BMW is by before they get to the apex. So Chris Lowers, again, back up into 7th place. This is a very intense fight. There's 7 cars involved in this because Yuanxi Lin in the Ford still on the back of this train.
Yeah, all it takes is one small mistake. Unfortunately, we know things come in threes, and for Actonez, that was 3 runs wide at the half spin at turn 1, and then running wide between turns 3 and 4, and then running wide at turn 6. Ultimately, let Lowers pass, but he's still there. He didn't lose too much. He lost 1 position. He's pretty much no, he's down 2 from where he started now because of that. So he's still near enough where he was at the start of the race, but he'll probably be kicking himself, I'm sure, after that. But Lau is kicking the tail out of turn 1 as well. So might not be over yet for Acton, as if he can stay there or thereabouts. He has the pace, so he's just got to bide his time. Maybe try a pit early, get some fresh air and a reset.
Oh, Steinmetz! Oh, goodness me! That was the mother of all tank slappers. Sorry to cut you off there, Brad. That was absolutely intense. And how lucky was Yuan Lin to escape contact with the McLaren? This is what happened to Steinmetz. A little wide on entry, got unsettled over the curb there on the exit. That's one of the downsides to being able to use all that tarmac without getting an off track. You open yourself up to getting massively unsettled over the curb. So, Yuri Steinmetz now all the way back in 14th. So his charge forward has unfortunately come to naught so far.
Yeah, it's very almost a mirror image of what happened to Daniel Gray 2 laps ago. He I was a bit more unfortunate. He spun so far in that he clobbered that inside wall, but Monastir, sorry, is in the pits now for his scheduled stop. So that'll probably put him back around David Gomez. So just inside the top 20 is a very rough estimate, but we'll watch how that one goes. And Steinmetz, after his spin, comes in behind him as well. But yeah, very lucky for Jean. Z- wow, let me start that again. Yanji Lin in that spin. I'm sure he's gonna probably be trying to do some cool down breaths on his oval trips because that was a very close call for him.
Indeed. Well, Yuri Steinmetz also a close call. He's decided to bring it into the pits after having that spin. After losing those positions, he is going to approach the fight slightly differently here by pitting early relative to his rivals, and Steinmetz rejoins in 20th place, just ahead of Florian Roeder. Um, Interestingly, this is probably an error with the timing on my end. My live timing, I'm actually not getting any stop times, so I won't be able to provide you that information off the top of my head. We'll have to rely on the overlays provided by our good mate Scott Fountain for that one. But it seems that stops are running pretty consistently around 11 seconds so far, and it looks like Yam Jabur is going to become the next car to make his way into the pits from about 11th place. See where he comes out versus Yuri Steinmetz, because Steinmetz was very close to the battle that Jabur was involved in. Of course, that spin's going to put Steinmetz back quite a bit. 9.5 seconds there for Yam Jabur. And now I'm getting stop times coming up for Yam Jabur there. Actually, they disappear as soon as he leaves the pits. So I guess I'm having some technical issues of my own on my end, but we'll continue. And Jabur rejoining.
Yeah, that spin definitely cost Steinmetz quite a bit because he is coming through turn three as we see um geez, who are we just on? Well, Jabor, sorry,
Jabur and
coming
Monestier
onto
as
the
well.
oval. So that is a big deficit between the two of them, who were running almost line of stone before Steinmetz's spin. So big difference that that spin makes. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense. It was quite a big spin, quite a spectacular spin, but obviously he's still in the running and he's only down 3 spots after his spin is Steinmetz. So he hasn't lost too much, but not ideally where he was before the spin.
Well, Jabur has come out with Matt Monestier, who's already pitted himself so far um, out of all the drivers so far. It seems 6 of them have taken routine pit stops. Ron Dat has brought his McLaren into the pit lane, and very long transit time for him. I think he was getting some damage repaired. He is back out onto the circuit and running a little slow there just to let the other cars go. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that McLaren might still have a little bit of rear end damage. So Dat, unfortunately, not able to get the maximum pace out of his machine. These two, on the other hand, 14th and 15th, and they should be fighting for perhaps the final position in the top 10 when things all work out within this field. It seems to me, Brad, like most drivers are leaving it very late to go for a pit stop, as Chris Lowers is going to make his way past Chris Whitaker, who's already made his stop and, of course, had that spin and damage a little earlier. He's still keeping his pace up, is Chris, just trying to get a classified finish and some points on the board. But yeah, seems to me like the first of our front runners to blink, Brad, is Oskari Karkinen. Was running P2 and now into the pits for him.
Yeah, it's he's
Oh, and he's
actually
got
looking
big
quite
damage.
damaged. Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay, so that's not a routine pit stop there for Oscari. We might have to go to a replay for this one because, oh goodness, this is going to be heartbreaking for Oscari Karkinen. He's made effectively the same mistake that Yuri Steinmetz did, except this time he went into the grass. So he's coming through the infield section here through turn 3, then into turn 4, gets on the throttle, but carrying just a bit too much speed in and loses the rear when the traction control kicks in and the front end goes straight into the wall. Oskari Karkinen, absolutely hero to zero right there, was running second. So that's a great result, completely gone.
Yeah, that was very mirror image of a lot of, well, not quite mirror image, but very similar to a lot of the incidents we have seen coming out of turn 4. But unfortunately, the BMW being front engine, that causes a lot more damage to that car than, the BMW, sorry, the Lamborghini or the McLaren that spun a couple of laps ago. So obviously they'll still be damaged, but at least their engine's intact. So unfortunately, that is presumably race over because that will be a lot of damage to repair in just a short 12 minutes that we have left. So very unfortunate for Karkonen, who we have seen before and will hopefully still see next week, but very upsetting for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Ji Lin, meanwhile, talking about that battle for P10-ish, has made his way through the pits now and has brought his Ford back out, and he's currently in 12th position. So, depending on what happens to the drivers who were around him, this battle of Monestier and Jabeur, they could potentially pass him here. It seems by pitting later, Lin has gained a bit of an advantage as we see Dorian Delan, former fourth place competitor, um, started third place, but bringing his car into the lane and looks like a bit of a familiar-ish looking livery there. Blue, white, and red. I don't think it's an Alpine livery for sure, but certainly a very nice color scheme. Let's see what the pit stop time is. 12, 13, 14. This is a long stop here for Dorian. Wondering if he might have overfueled it or is repairing some damage.
Yeah, that's a very long stop indeed. He's been in the pits now for 50 seconds, and Wanji Lin was only in for 30 seconds. That's 4 seconds nearabouts faster than anyone else this race. So I'm not sure if it's he's been saving fuel, so he hasn't had to stop as long. That's why his pace has been a little bit off compared to everyone else. But he's now, Delana is now over a minute in the box, so must be damage, or maybe he has ticked full fuel because that's a very long stop.
Yeah, well, Delan has made his way out of the pits now and down quite a bit as David Gomez, we see, also in the pits for an extended period of time here. Chris Lauers, meanwhile, still out on track as I'm seeing Ali Chiat Akdeniz into the pits as well in the Audi and doing maybe a bit of steering testing there. Oh, apparently just had a crash, according to our director. So maybe some front right damage for him there. Something has gone very wrong for Ali in the pits. Um, Actually, that damage is from quite some time before. He already had the damage when he came into the pits, and for a few laps before that point, it actually looks like he hit the wall coming out of the final turn on lap 21. So that's the reason for that. As the pit lane has now come alive, we've got Isidri Miro Ferre, Albert Clavaguera, Rafalski, and Chatterton all in the pits at the moment as they make their way out. Looks like that's David Gomez making his way just out in front of Schweigler with Ferre in very close tow. So Gomez is going to have to let these guys by at some point. Seems to me, Brad, that the back stretch is the best place to do that as Maxime Tillynerve makes his way into the pits as well.
Yeah, everyone in the top six has made their lane transition, except I believe Tobias Wessels hasn't come
Hmm.
in yet. So he's the only one in the top seven to pit. So we'll see how he goes. His pace is near about Salida, maybe a little bit slower than Egloff was, or has been rather. Yeah, he's about half a second to a second slower than Egloff. So you would think that Egloff will quite easily overcut him, but he is dealing with traffic into the chicane at the moment. So that's going to be less than ideal, but we'll see if Tobias reacts to all of them coming into the pits because he's just behind them on track. Actually, he's coming out of the chicane now, so he does have quite a big advantage, but that does go away quite quickly when you come into stop.
Indeed, it does. John Sylvester on Yuri Steinmetz here for 11th. Steinmetz is back in the battle for 11th place, but I think it got to highlight Yanji Lin by coming in for that pit stop just before his competitors did. Lin has managed to jump up to
Oh,
P6, and Wessels has yet to pit. Something happened there, didn't it?
yeah, that was Matt Monester. He got spun by the Ferrari behind him. No,
Ooh.
he had contact with Actiniz in front of him, I believe, and just when he hit the curb, it sent him round.
All right, let's take a look at it here on the Virtual Racing School replay. Acton is up in front of the BMW, and oh yeah, Acton is, I think, running a bit wide of the second apex. Meanwhile, Monestier going in perhaps a little bit too hard as well. So looks like no harm, no foul for either of them, no heavy damage. Tobias Vessels, meanwhile, has made his pit stop, and he's just ahead of these two, Lowers and Lin.
Yeah, Lynn's been driving very, very well in the second half of this race. He's sitting sixth now that most of the pit stops, if not all of them, I think all of them have run their course now. So that's a very, very good spot to be in. He's up 5 positions from the start, so very well driven. But still, we have just under 6.5 minutes to go, and Chris Lowers is glued to his rear bumper through that chicane. So it's not quite done yet, but even still, a seventh place finish for Wang Jilin, if he does get past, is still a very fantastic result in the only Ford in the field. So it's things that we love to see.
Absolutely, it's funny. It seems more often than not, the only Ford in the field ends up doing quite well. It's almost as if you shouldn't just drop an old car for the shiny new one sometimes. So Lowers and Actonis very close together coming into the midfield. Acton is, of course, dealing with that front right damage, and we saw him weaving in the pits, I think, just to test out whether or not his steering was up to spec still. Seems for the time being, Yam Jabor is looking very quick. He took 4/10 out of Actoniz on the last lap. For this battle up ahead, Chris Lowers took a 10th out of Yuan Ji Lin. So there's potential position changes here in the last few laps. We'll probably expect them to have 4 to go. With Guillaume Egloff starting lap 28 here. And Egloff has got a huge lead, 12 seconds over Dylan O'Keefe. And I've got to say, O'Keefe has done pretty well as well to keep himself nice and clean in position 2 there, coming through turn 3. Started in 5th, so he's taken advantage of some of the other incidents that we have seen for the likes of Chris Whitaker and Oskari Karkinen, Daniel Gray as well falling out of contention. Our retirements include Karkinen and Gray, along with Matthias Beer and Fabio Sal.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about being the fastest, but being the most consistent and an opportunist, that's the word.
Yes.
Um, is what gets the result in the end. And I was going to say at the start of the race, Egloff, obviously, he went quite early off the start because that chicane is so difficult to navigate off the start because it is too wide, but it's very difficult to go too wide through there, especially on exit. So getting that jump just got him that little bit of fresh air that pretty much put him in the position he is now because not having to defend out of that chicane or into turn one, it makes a world of difference. And we see Jabor coming into the chicane. He kind of looked on Actonez, but it was kind of a I'm still here, don't forget me look, not really a I'm going for the pass now look. So I'm sure Actonez doesn't forget that he's there, but he was just reminding him just in case he did. So still single file, but I'm sure Jabor is probably going to start picking up the pace very soon because, again, he was 6/10 of a lap quicker last lap and about matched him that lap. So the pace is there. It's just whether he can get into a position where he can make that.
It's amazing how harsh these curbs are in the final part of the lap, which saw Yuri Steinmetz going over them, and my goodness, they are brutal. You wouldn't want to trip up over one of those. It's a very nice view, actually, just seeing how hard the drivers are pushing. You mentioned reminders, Brad. Well, I think Chris Lowers is going to be giving a few reminders to Yanxi Lin very shortly as we check out Actanis and Jabeur once again. Loving this dividing wall between turn 1 and turn 8. Fantastic stuff. It does feel a little bit surreal when you're racing around here and you see cars coming the other way on the other side of the circuit. Have a look at Vessels. He's actually quite close to this battle between Lin and Lowers, but Acton is continuing to hold off the advances of Yam Jabeur here, and it seems that there's not many opportunities here for Jabeur. He's only going to get 2 more, I believe, with Guillaume Egloff now halfway around lap 30. He should get the white flag this time by, maybe next time by. I think it's going to be a bit borderline, but these drivers rapidly running out of time to sort out their positions as Jabeur continues to search for a way through here on Acton, trying those kind of tighter turn-ins through the infield. The same is true here for Chris Lowers on Yuanxi Lin, but the Ford is proving steadfast and not giving up. Guillaume Egloff, our leader, about to cross the line now, and he has done it with 1 minute and 20 seconds to go. So this is going to be the penultimate lap. He should cross the line with about 5 seconds to go at this stage.
Yeah, it's probably thankful for drivers like, oh,
Whoa! Bit of
very
lap
close
traffic making
there.
life difficult.
Well, we spoke about that at on their formation lap, so very close, and we see a
Oh,
move now. That's acting as going not so
that's
much
Jabeur
defensive, but yeah,
going for
Jabor
the move.
just gets up the inside. So Actinez tries to come back, but there's only so much he can do into that chicane and ultimately yields the position. But he does still have a bit of a buffer behind to Matt Monestia in the BMW that we saw earlier. So still that top 10 is safe for Actinez. All he has to do is drive this next lap and a half. But Lau is probably feeling the pressure of the clock now as we pretty much have 1 lap and a couple of corners to go for Egloff. So drivers like Lin are not happy that the white flag is only just coming out, but drivers like Lowers are probably thankful that there's still 1 lap to go because that means he has, give or take, 16 chances to pass. Not all of those are viable, but there's still 16 corners that he can pass at. So, and of course we have those 2 long, not so straight straights that offer up a nice big draft. So only 1 to go, but still a few opportunities for Lowers to get past Lin on this final lap.
Indeed, Egloff has begun the final lap. He's currently halfway through the infield at the moment, making his way into the right-handers, coming over the hill. And we haven't given much airtime here to Guillaume Egloff. And the reason for that is he's just been so far out in front that he hasn't been involved in much of the action, which really goes to show how good this drive has been from the Frenchman in the BMW. Fantastic performance, taking pole position by the margin that he did as the Porsche of Chris Whitaker lets him go. Would rather go a lap down just to minimize the driving distance. Does seem that these positions that we've been looking at all through the race, some of them are still not settled. Or actually, we'll go to it in a second because Guillaume Egloff navigating the final 2 turns to take a great win here in Virtual Racing School GT. But Yuanji Lin is slow by the side of the circuit. And you know what, Brad? I think he's underfueled it.
I was thinking the very same thing because he was stopped for 3 seconds less than almost anyone else. There are a few other short stops, but yes, he is out of fuel as it's just come
Ah,
up on the driver's chat. So he'll be very upset with that. Going from 6th to 16th, he'll drop down to once Sidre Miro Ferre crosses the line in a couple of minutes. So Very unfortunate for him, but very well driven. But you got to make it to the end to get the result first. So very unfortunate there. But I'm sure Lowers will take that pass however it came.
Yes, I'm sure. We take a look at the BMW here of Francisco de la Fuente. Marco Schweigler crosses the line ahead of him, and that is 14th for, 13th for Fuente. But yeah, big F in the chat for Yuan Lin. It was a real shame to see that happen there. You know, he drove well, did Yuan Lin. It's just, you know, I think our suspicions were raised a little bit when he had that very short pit stop, and, you know, I said, oh, he's nailed the strategy, but turns out ultimately he hadn't. And I think about this point on the replay, Yuanji realized, oh dear, I am running out of fuel. I'm going to have to pull over to the side of the track. Already does that, and lets that's Chris Lowers, yes, Lowers making his way past him. And, well, there we go. Just lurching forward, and eventually having to come to a stop. So very unfortunate for Yuanji Lin. Ultimately, he is classified 16th. We'll go through the results then. Guillaume Egloff, a dominant victory by nearly 15 seconds over Dylan O'Keefe. Lachlan Cowie completes the podium after starting in 9th. A great drive there. Maxime Tillinerve as well, making up 4 positions to finish in 4th. Tobias Vessels, 5th, with Chris Lowers making it 6th. Yam Jabor in 7th. 8th was Ali Sihat Akdeniz and Matt Monestier in 9th. Yuri Steinmetz, despite that spin, rounds out the top 10.
11th, we have John Sylvester with Marco Svigli. God, I struggle with that one. Zweigler, 5 seconds behind him. Francisco de la Fuente in 13th. Dorian Delaney in 14th. Isidre Miro Ferry, the last car to finish on the lead lap, in 15th. Wanji Lin, who we saw run out of fuel, in 16th. Alberto Clavera in 17th. Rafael Rafalski in 18th. Chris Chatterton 19th. And Florian Rodier in 20th.
Also coming home a lap down, Shane Dunn and Ron Datt. Unfortunately, Chris Whitaker, he did make it to the finish, but 5 laps down after a long time in the pits spent repairing damage. Florian Rodoy, I think a retirement, as well as David Gamez there. Oskari Karkinen, Daniel Gray, Matthias Beer, and Fabio Saal rounding out our field. And Fabio, the driver out the earliest. Unfortunately, when the BMW spun ahead of him, he just didn't have anywhere to go, and that is the cruelty of racing sometimes. But he will have a chance to get a good result, sorry if I can get my words out, next week at Interlagos. The Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache plays host to round 11 of Virtual Racing School GT Sprint. You'll be able to catch that at midday GMT on Saturday, the 28th of August, right here on Sim Speed TV. Well, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully was an entertaining show for you. It certainly was entertaining for us up here in the box. I'm Reese Gardner, Bradley Wingard alongside me in the box, with Scott Fountain handling production on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook, on Twitter as well. Make sure to follow us on all those respective platforms to see more. From all of us at SimSpeed TV, bye for now, but certainly not forever. Catch you in Brazil next Saturday. Thank you.
Everything else on the both of them! Maloney! Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up top! Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get involved!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go!
Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?